My beloved child, catch this signal before the moment shifts, because somewhere between what has been left unsaid and what is finally ready to be revealed, your soulmate is searching for a way to reach you. Not with another ordinary conversation. Not with meaningless words. Something has changed inside them, and they can no longer pretend the silence is enough. They have been replaying moments connected to you, remembering details they once overlooked, and realizing that one truth keeps returning no matter how much they try to move forward: there is something important you deserve to know. But here is where everything becomes unexpected. The message they want to give you is not simply about the past. It is about what they are considering right now. Stay with this, because the smallest detail may become the biggest turning point. They have reached a place where keeping everything inside feels harder than finally being clear. And what if the reason you opened this message today is because you needed to hear one thing before making your next emotional decision? Don't skip. The real revelation is still ahead. There is a conversation your soulmate has imagined more than once. In that imagined moment, they finally have your attention, and for the first time they do not hide behind hesitation. They tell you that distance did not erase what mattered. Time did not make every question disappear. Instead, it showed them which feelings were temporary and which truths continued returning. But there is another layer. Something happened recently, a realization, a quiet moment, perhaps even an ordinary reminder, that made them look at your connection differently. Suddenly, they understood that waiting for the perfect moment could mean never saying what needs to be said. That is why the energy around this message feels different. This is not about chasing yesterday. It is about understanding tomorrow. Stay till the end, because what they want you to know could completely change how you interpret their silence. They may have seemed distant, uncertain, or impossible to read, yet beneath that surface, a decision has slowly been forming. And once that decision becomes clear, the entire story begins to look different. Now listen carefully, because this is where the signal changes. Your soulmate does not simply want to reach you to say, "I remember you." They want you to understand that they have been questioning what truly matters to them, and your connection keeps appearing in those answers. Something huge is waiting for you, but it is not a random promise or an impossible prediction. It is a truth about choice. They are beginning to understand that meaningful connections cannot survive forever on assumptions, unfinished conversations, and words that remain trapped inside the mind. Someone eventually has to become brave enough to bring clarity. And this time, they are wondering whether that person should be them. Imagine that for a moment. What if the silence you thought meant an ending was actually the space before an important conversation? What if the next chapter is not about returning to exactly what existed before, but discovering whether something wiser can be built from everything both of you have learned? Stay a little longer when the next message arrives, because there is one specific thing your soulmate wants you to understand about why they are trying to reach you now. And that reason changes the meaning of everything that came before. Something has shifted behind the silence, and this time, the message is becoming impossible to ignore. Your soulmate has reached a realization they did not expect. The longer they avoided saying what mattered, the louder the unfinished truth became inside their thoughts. They tried to understand whether this connection was simply a powerful memory or something deserving another honest conversation. And slowly, one answer kept returning. They do not want you remembering the distance without knowing what was happening beneath it. They want you to know that there were moments when they almost reached out, almost explained everything, almost replaced uncertainty with clarity, but hesitation stopped them. Yet something is different now. Don't skip, because their hesitation is no longer the biggest force guiding them. They are beginning to imagine what happens if they remain silent for too long. What if you completely turn the page without ever hearing what they needed to say? What if an opportunity for understanding disappears simply because neither person knew what the other was thinking? That possibility has changed something inside them. And now, instead of asking, "Should I speak?" they are beginning to ask a completely different question: "How do I finally say this clearly?" But there is one detail they desperately want you to understand. Their message is not meant to pull you backward or ask you to put your life on hold. In fact, the opposite may surprise you. They want you to keep becoming stronger, clearer, and more certain about what you deserve. Somewhere along their own journey, they realize that a meaningful connection should not require someone to abandon their growth. It should inspire two people to meet with greater honesty. Stay till the end, because this realization leads directly to the words they have been rehearsing in their mind. They want to tell you, "I understand things now that I couldn't understand before." Not everything. Not perfectly. But enough to recognize where silence created confusion and where assumptions replaced conversation. And perhaps that is why you need to hear this today. Clarity can arrive later than expected without losing its value. If this message reminds you of someone or gives you a new perspective, you can share it, leave your thoughts, or subscribe and stay connected to what unfolds next. Because the next part of this story is where intention begins turning into action. Now comes the question your soulmate can no longer avoid: what happens when they finally reach you? They know they cannot control your response. They cannot decide how you will feel or what you will choose. And strangely, accepting that has made them more prepared to speak. Something huge is waiting for you, not because the future has already been written, but because one truthful conversation can reveal possibilities that silence never could. They want you to know that if they approach you, they want to do it differently. Less guessing. Less hiding behind vague signals. More honesty. More respect for your boundaries. More willingness to listen instead of arriving with a finished story already written in their mind. But wait, the most surprising realization is still coming. There is a specific reason they suddenly feel that now may be the moment to reach you, and it has everything to do with something they recently understood about you. Before you move away from this message, remember that detail. They have noticed a change. A change that made them realize you may no longer be standing where they left you emotionally. And once they understood that, waiting stopped feeling comfortable. The next revelation explains exactly what they believe has changed, and why it could finally push them to speak. Here is the detail they were not prepared to notice: you changed without waiting for anyone to notice. Somewhere along the way, your soulmate began to understand that the version of you they remembered could no longer be taken for granted. Your energy seemed different. Your priorities appeared clearer. You were no longer standing emotionally in the same place, waiting for unfinished questions to answer themselves. And that realization caught their attention. Suddenly, the possibility of reaching you stopped feeling like something they could postpone indefinitely. Don't skip this moment, because this is where their thinking turns upside down. They began asking themselves whether you had finally learned to continue forward without needing their explanation. Whether you had discovered that your peace was worth protecting. Whether another chapter of your life had already begun quietly opening. And instead of making them want to control your direction, it forced them to confront their own hesitation. They realized something simple but powerful. If there is truth to communicate, it should be communicated honestly, not saved forever for some imaginary perfect day. And now their message becomes clearer. What they want you to know is not, "Stop everything and wait for me." It is something far more meaningful. "Please don't misunderstand my silence as proof that nothing mattered." There were thoughts they never expressed properly, questions they were afraid to ask, and moments when they convinced themselves that waiting would somehow make everything easier. It didn't. Time gave them perspective, but it also showed them the cost of leaving important things unfinished. Stay till the end, because one realization changed how they see your entire connection. They started remembering not only the dramatic moments, but the tiny ones. The conversations that felt effortless, the unexpected understanding, the way certain words stayed in their mind long after the moment passed. Those memories made them recognize that what mattered was never just one event. It was the pattern beneath everything. Yet they also know memories alone cannot build a future. Something huge is waiting for you in this truth. They understand that reaching you means arriving with clarity, not confusion. They cannot simply appear and expect everything to return to the way it once was. If they speak, they must finally say what they mean. But wait, there is another turn. Your soulmate has begun imagining two possible futures. In one, they continue waiting, hoping circumstances somehow create the conversation for them. In the other, they take responsibility for their own words and reach out without knowing exactly what answer will return. And for the first time, the second future feels more honest. That does not guarantee what happens afterward. Your choice remains yours. Their choice remains theirs. But perhaps that is exactly why this moment matters. A genuine connection is not proven by predictions, it is revealed through honesty, consistency, respect, and what two people actually choose to do. So if someone reaches you, watch their actions as carefully as you hear their words. You'll understand everything at the end, because the real question is no longer whether your soulmate has something important to say. The deeper question is what they are finally prepared to do after saying it. And there is one decision forming behind all of this that could reveal whether they are truly ready for a different chapter. That decision is closer than you might think. Before the next door opens, notice what has quietly disappeared, the old excuses. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that meaningful words cannot remain forever inside imagined conversations. At some point, intention has to become action. And this is the decision forming behind everything you have heard so far. They are considering whether to stop waiting for circumstances to create the perfect opening and simply approach you with honesty. No elaborate performance. No confusing signals. Just the truth they should have communicated much earlier. Don't skip, because there is something important hidden inside that decision. They are no longer thinking only about what they want from you. They are thinking about what you deserve from them, clarity. They know you may have questions. They know you may need time. They even understand that your answer may be different from the one they secretly hope to hear. Yet accepting those possibilities has made their intention stronger, because they finally understand that reaching you should never be about controlling your response. It should be about giving you the information that silence kept away from you. And there is another reason this moment feels so different. Your soulmate has started recognizing that your future cannot remain suspended around an unfinished chapter. They see, or perhaps simply sense, that you are becoming more selective about what deserves your attention. You are learning that words matter, but patterns matter more. Promises may sound beautiful, but consistency reveals intention. That realization is forcing them to think carefully about what they would actually bring into your life if communication begins again. Stay a little longer, because this is where their message becomes surprisingly mature. They do not want to ask you to forget everything that happened. They want the opportunity to acknowledge it. To explain what they can explain. To listen where they once assumed. And then, if both of you choose it, to discover what can be built from truth rather than imagination. If this unfolding message speaks to you, sharing it with someone who needs clarity, leaving your perspective, or subscribing can keep this conversation moving beyond a single moment. Because what comes next is not simply about reunion. It is about recognizing whether a connection is actually capable of becoming healthier than its past. Now imagine the moment their message finally reaches you. Your screen lights up. A familiar name appears, or perhaps the contact arrives in a completely different way than you expected. Your first reaction may be surprise. But before emotion writes the entire story, remember this: you are allowed to observe before you decide. Something huge is waiting for you in that distinction. Hearing someone does not mean surrendering your boundaries. Giving a conversation space does not mean promising an outcome. The strongest version of this story is one where both people can speak honestly and still choose freely. And your soulmate is beginning to understand that too. They know the important thing they want to tell you will mean very little unless their future actions support it. That is why their next step matters more than any dramatic sentence they could offer. Wait till the final moment, because one question remains unanswered: what exactly are they hoping will happen after they finally reach you? Their answer is not what they once would have given. Their expectations have changed. Their understanding has changed. And when you hear what they truly want from that first conversation, the entire meaning of this message may shift again. Now the hidden intention comes into focus, and it is quieter, deeper, and more unexpected than a dramatic promise. Your soulmate is not imagining that one conversation will magically restore everything. What they are hoping for is something far more real, a chance to finally understand each other without the noise that surrounded the past. They want a moment where neither of you has to guess. A moment where questions can become words, where assumptions can be replaced by answers, and where both of you can discover whether the connection still has somewhere meaningful to go. Don't skip, because this is the point where their message changes from emotion into purpose. They are beginning to understand that reaching you is only the first step. What happens afterward depends on patience, honesty, and whether their actions can support what they say. They do not want to rush you into an answer. They want to know whether a conversation can reopen the door to understanding. And somewhere beneath that hope is one powerful realization. They may have spent too much time wondering whether you still care, when the question they truly needed to ask was whether they were prepared to show up differently. There is something else they want you to know. They have imagined your response, but they cannot predict it, and they are finally accepting that. Maybe you will welcome the conversation. Maybe you will need time. Maybe you will ask the exact questions they once avoided. Whatever happens, they know they cannot arrive expecting the old version of you to answer. Stay till the end, because this matters more than it first appears. Your soulmate has noticed that you are becoming someone who values clarity over confusion and consistency over temporary emotion. That change has made them reconsider what they would need to bring into your world. Not louder words. Better intentions followed by visible effort. Not another unfinished promise. A willingness to communicate even when the conversation becomes uncomfortable or uncertain. Something huge is waiting for you in this realization. Perhaps the most important thing they want to tell you is not simply how they feel, it is what they finally understand. They understand that meaningful connections are not protected by silence. They are protected by honesty, respect, patience, and two people choosing to meet each other where they actually are. But there is still one piece they have not said aloud. One sentence sitting behind everything else. Before you go, hear this carefully, because it could explain why they are trying to reach you now rather than someday later. In their mind, the sentence sounds something like this: I don't want another chapter of my life to begin while this truth remains unspoken between us. That does not mean your future has already been decided. It means they have reached a point where uncertainty feels less honest than communication. And now the choice moves from imagination into reality. Will they actually send the message? Will they finally begin the conversation they have rehearsed so many times? You might miss the turning point if you focus only on the words. Watch what happens afterward. Real intention becomes visible through consistency. Real understanding respects boundaries. Real change does not demand immediate trust. It gives trust a reason to grow. And there is one final revelation still waiting. If your soulmate gets the opportunity to speak freely, there is something they want you to know about the future they once imagined with you, and why that vision has suddenly returned with an entirely different meaning. The future they once imagined has returned to their mind, but now it looks completely different. Before, your soulmate may have pictured everything through emotion alone, believing that a powerful connection was enough to make every uncertainty disappear. Now they understand something deeper. A future between two people is not created by feelings alone, it is created through choices, communication, patience, and the courage to be clear when silence would be easier. That is why the thought of you has returned with new meaning. They are not simply remembering what was. They are questioning what could become possible if both of you approached the connection with everything you have learned since then. Don't skip this part, because their biggest realization is arriving quietly. They no longer want to reach you merely because they miss a familiar chapter. They want to discover whether the two people you are becoming could understand each other better than the two people you were before. And that difference changes everything. There is a sentence they have been carrying that explains why reaching you suddenly feels important: I should have been clearer when I had the chance. Not because every misunderstanding belongs to one person, but because they can finally recognize the moments when they could have communicated better. Stay till the end, because what follows matters more than any perfect confession. They know that if they contact you, beautiful words cannot be the only evidence you receive. They must listen. They must respect whatever pace feels right to you. They must allow you to ask questions without trying to control the answers. And they must understand that you have continued growing while they were figuring themselves out. Something huge is waiting for you inside that truth. The message you receive may not be